Hello everybody, how you doing? Okay, welcome to a place called High Cross, or is it Froxfield? I'm never quite sure. Anyway, this is a place that I've come to before to do some Shoeoff, so I thought I would do one today with the top 3 marathon shoes, the Vaporfly Next% 2, the Alphafly 2 and the Adios Pro 3. I've just done 2.5 miles, about my marathon pace, around about 7:15 in each of the 3 shoes, and it really was very difficult to choose between them, I must say. The Alphafly 2 perhaps felt the most cruisiest, the Next% 2 was the lightest, and the Adios Pro 3 perhaps sort of felt the most nimble in terms of like less surface area on the ground. But yeah, it really does come down to personal preference now. Anyway, let's take you through the video and dive into the stats a bit more. I've got a circuit of about 2.5 miles. I don't feeling that great today, so I'm going to just sort of take it at sort of like a good pace and see if I can replicate the same pace on the other 2 and see how we go and see which one I prefer. Okay, so the first one up is the Alphafly 2. Okay, just hit the first mile in 7:14. This is a quiet little country lane. Bit wet underfoot, but dry conditions, just sort of wet leaf, so interesting test of the grip as well. Yeah, quite lucky the Alphafly 2, actually, much more than I originally did. I know that both Ed Bud and FOD runner Andy has rather dismissed them. I think Andy's even sent them back, but yeah, they're doing a turn. I haven't actually raced them yet, but we'll see where we go. Okay, mile 2 done, 7 minutes exactly, so yeah, feeling okay. I do feel these are quite nice rolling shoes for these Alphaflys, which I guess is actually exactly what they're designed for, isn't it? Nice responsive cushioning, but not overwhelmingly unstable like the Pro X, say. Right, about half mile to go. Okay, the Alphafly 2 done, about 18:30, 7:10 pace. Not feeling that great today, just feel a bit sort of blocked up, but I was quite pleased with that pace because I didn't want to sort of cane it. Didn't get any of the arch problems that people like Ed Bud have been reporting, so maybe my foot shape just lends itself better to these shoes. But I didn't really get that problem in the first one, really, just a bit when you're walking around. Once I got going, it wasn't too bad, but I've certainly not noticed it at all in the second version, so maybe just working out better for me than Ed and Andy. Right, onto the Adios Pro 3s. Now with these, I instantly felt like they were sort of like narrower, I think because I actually pulled the laces in quite a lot and actually hard to get on because I have pulled in the laces a lot. So they kind of feel just sort of flicking my feet around lighter, but will they be any good? Okay, let's see how we go in the Adios Pro 3s on a report on the way. What I'm going to do is set racing activity on my Garmin to try and replicate that first run. So try and run it exactly to the same sort of pace, give or take a few seconds here and there. Obviously going to deviate a bit, aren't you? But the idea is to sort of like run it exactly the same pace, and then we can sort of compare how that felt. Okay, this is how we do it. So we go into the run mode, and then if I go into training, I want to do race and activity from history, and we'll select the one we've just done, 18:30.6, 2.58 miles. I think that was 7:10 pace, and you can hopefully see we've got that one set up. There we go, 2.58 distance remaining, and it'll give me an estimated finishing time when I start. Okay, so we're halfway around the Adios Pro 3 run. The pace is very similar to the Alphafly 2 deliberately. About 7:11 on the first mile. I think it was 7:15 with the Alphafly, so according to my watch I'm 3 seconds ahead, so certainly within the ballpark. But these Adios Pro 3s, they feel narrow on foot, narrow base. They feel slightly lighter, and I think they are. I'm not sure that I find them as cruisy. Feels like just slightly more unstable, if that makes any sense. Although it's now the second rep on a day when I'm not feeling great, but yeah, good shoe, but not sure it's really my favourite. Anyway, let's crack on. See you then. Okay, running the Adios Pro 3 done. It was pretty much exactly the same time as the Alphafly 2, I think just a few seconds quicker, so I managed to control that pace fine. Felt I slightly favoured the Alphafly 2s, but maybe that was more fresh. Anyway, I managed to run exactly the same time, more or less, didn't I? So that's a good thing. Into now to the Vaporfly Next% 2s, and they actually feel like the shoe which is actually the loosest of the shoes. I've got probably have to tie these in the most. So surprisingly, when the original Alphafly I thought was a very wide shoe fitting for me, in a way, the Alphafly 2, it seems to fit a bit narrower, bizarrely. So, right, this is probably my favourite shoe. This is the shoe I did my best race this year, Speedway 10K, 37 minutes 42. I'll link the video to that up there. Let's see how we go today. Let's say not a race, we're just trying to do this 7:15 or so pace and see how we go. Okay, halfway around the next percent twos. I feel interesting that the shoe that feels the sloppiest fit, actually, whether I just need to tie my laces up more. But a slight bit of heel slippage at the back, and the shoe that I can perhaps feel the plate the most, although I have worn these a lot more than the other two, so that could be a factor. But I'm on pace, so everything's sort of fine. Maybe the verdict is they're all pretty much the same these days. Just choose whichever one you can get cheapest. Right, see you at the end. Okay, the next percent two's done. Very similar time to the other two deliberately, so yeah. What do I make of that? Well, all in all, it's been quite difficult to separate them, really. I was going to say that it wasn't feeling a day that I was feeling that great. So next percent two, I think might have had a slightly higher heart rate at the end, but I think that's sort of understandable because it was my third rep. So maybe the acid test is that, yeah, you take all the free shoes and just which one ever fits you the best, just which one ever takes your eye. Because to be honest, with these three, it was really hard to tell any difference between them in terms of performance. They all seem to work fairly well. I was pleasantly surprised by the Alphafly 2, I must say. Anyway, let's go and have a look at the stats and see what else we can see. Okay, here's the customary spreadsheet. Just a quick reminder of what I did. I ran this loop here of 2.58 miles, rather rural loop, bit undulating in the Alphafly 2, then the Adios Pro 3 and the next percent 2. Had a decent amount of time between the shoes, 8 minutes between each one. It was slightly cold, so there's difficulty getting them on and off as well. And the basic loop was when it goes slightly uphill for a bit, about 3%, and nothing too bad, and then it's sort of undulating for the rest of it, really. So I broke it down into these three segments. If I say so myself, I think the pacing got spot on. I got all of these basically within 5 seconds, 4.6 to be precise. So the Alphafly 2, I just run it as I saw fit, and ended up with 7:10 pace. That's very similar pace to the 3:09 marathon I did last year. Obviously I need to run a bit faster if I want to break through again. As I said, I didn't feel that great today, so I think in a way I was quite pleased that I could actually run at all. I think the stats kind of show that there wasn't much to choose between them, which is kind of what I felt on foot. Obviously you expect the averages to go up slightly, and they did as you go along due to heart rate drift. Interestingly, the highest maximum was actually in the Adios Pro 3. Perhaps that was the shoe that, although it sort of feels quite nimble in terms of like being the narrowest on foot, maybe it wasn't necessarily the shoe that I actually liked. I think the Alphafly 2 surprised me in this Shoeoff. When I first got it, I didn't really like it at all. Initially, I did a Shoeoff between the Alphafly 2 and the Adios Pro 3, and I think the Adios Pro 3 won that one. I think now it's almost like gone the other way around, and I actually perhaps prefer the Alphafly 2, which is kind of interesting one, especially as a somewhat heavier shoe. I think 285 in the Adios Pro 3 and 325 in the Alphafly in my UK 13. But all these other stats, look, the powers there are almost identical. What was interesting though, that the cadence was slightly lower in the Alphafly 2. I guess I've seen that before, that obviously the shoe lends itself to a lower cadence because of the bounce, and you can see that the VO was a lot higher. But I've also seen that when I'm fresher, I do seem to have a slightly lower cadence, so there might be an element of the two there working together. And if you look at these splits on the segments, I've got them all within a couple of seconds, so I'm very pleased with my pacing effort today. It's also interesting if you compare, I did a Shoeoff here in August 2020, the Alphafly 1 and the next percent 1 were in that one, and I was somewhat fitter then, and it was also like a warm summer's evening, 20 degrees compared to 7 today. And then after my calf tear a few months later, I then did another Shoeoff featuring the Adios Pro 1 against the next percent. And I wasn't very fit at all then, so you can see at the moment my fitness is kind of between the two. Though it was interesting today that my heart rate was a lot higher than it was in either of these ones. I think that might reflect the fact that I've had this sort of virus for a couple of weeks and I didn't feel well at all today. So yeah, I mean the fitness is kind of there, but I think I was struggling a bit to actually make progress. But I hope as we get into the winter, things can start cruising along. So what do you make of this? Which is your favourite out of these three? I think if anything, for this one, I might consider actually doing a race now in the Alphafly 2, especially a long race. See how it shapes up. The next percent 2, maybe the pair I've got are just getting on a bit, but I think I'd always probably out of choice wear the next percent 1. That's the shoe that I've worn for my 2 marathons so far, or since they came out anyway. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. The Adios Pro 3 I think will continue to be a good training shoe, and I've also got the Prime X as well, which I found was a very good long Sunday run cruiser the other week. So yeah, I hope you found this interesting. Like and subscribe on that, and see you next one then. Bye.